Bueno. Welcome, everybody, to the South Star Classroom. I am your co-host, Omar Yanar, and we got a special episode for y'all today. As the doc always says, when the adults are away, the children will play. And today, the children, ladies and gentlemen, are going to play. We had a show. Maybe we push that show to next week about truancy and why students aren't showing up to school, which I actually think is a pretty relevant show considering the incredible amount of students just straight up not showing up to school. But with my co-host, Dr. Charles Cole, the political scientist, the philosopher, the brilliant man that he is, he and I get a chance to shoot the shit about politics. And I think this will be a special show because, oftentimes we come to these shows prepared with a topic, prepared with some things to discuss. This one, ladies and gentlemen, just going to be a straight ass conversation that you guys get to listen into with Doc and I. But first, Doc, in patronage to our Queen Jubilee, brother, how you doing, man?
I'm doing well, man. I was under the weather today. I canceled most of my meetings. This is the first thing I've done, and I didn't tape the other show. I'm gonna tape the other show after, and then try to do some makeup work. So I was like, my boy is, we knew Jude was gonna be away. We knew David was gonna be away, brother. I was not gonna leave you hanging, brother. So I got water. I'm good.
I appreciate that. Shit, you can, man. You can
man,
leave me hanging, but I appreciate that.
We about to that, man. How are you doing, man? How are you doing, and what have you been watching lately? That's what I want to know.
Like watching
what do you watch? What does Omar watch on television? Like, what is he
what are the watching habits? So for our audience, let me quickly say I'm reading two incredible books right now. One I'm almost done with, called Ishmael. Man, if you haven't read that one blow the hair off your head, man, to quote Goodwill Hunting about what he said about Howard Zinn's People's History of the United States, another incredible book, and the Book of Longing. But in terms of shows, man, I love Guy Ritchie, like a lot. Like, I love the style, I love the time frame, I love the energy, I love the way people are dressed. So right now I'm watching Young Sherlock on
Prime?
On Prime, which is just excellent. Anything Sherlock Holmes, man, I'm going to watch. And this one particularly with Guy Ritchie, coming back from the two movies he did with Robert Downey Jr. and Jude Law that I also loved. This one's actually pretty excellent. And there's some solid twists in the narrative thus far that I really enjoy.
Omar, before you go any further, are you going to be moving to London and getting a London flat? I mean, you're in this Guy Ritchie phase. Are you leaving us for?
Listen, man, I got to tell you, I want to live around the world. That's the goal. And I know in some previous life, I was definitively in London in like the 1800s. I care way too much about it in a particular way that I'm like, oh, okay, clearly like I was there at like turn of the century or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love it, man. What are you watching?
I was just curious because I love movies. I have my little theater in my house, and I may or may not have a special box that allows me to watch movies that may or may not be.
I
may or may not, but Hail Mary just came out. I started
Project Hail Mary. Is that the one with Ryan Gosling?
Yeah, Gosling. Yeah, I started watching that. Well, remember, I'm not feeling well, so my head was hurt. I fell asleep on it, but I'm gonna probably finish that. And then there's just been these run of these very niche dramas on like TV, like you just said, like Young Sherlock. So there's the Night Manager that like took a 8 or 9 year gap in between seasons, and I'm randomly watching that. And I randomly watched that. I randomly watched Daredevil is about to be released. A new season comes out today.
Yeah, I can't. That's today, right? I want to watch that.
Yeah, I looked at some stuff. From the last season. And I actually jumped back into the last season of Punisher that I've gotten forgotten. But I just like random stuff. I like the comic book stuff. I like the good. I like the shows that kind of take themselves a little seriously. I've been watching Paradise like everybody else has been. It's an interesting show. It's getting a little whack.
It is.
Pitt is probably one of the best things on television. I watched The Pitt, and Toy, I can see you watching that, especially because it's in Philly. I think they tape right down the street from Abbott Elementary. Actually, I think they park in like the same places. It's really interesting. But have you watched The Pitt at all?
No.
The Pitt is really good. It's really, really good. I don't want to. I mean,
I'm going to write that one down.
It's the original guy from ER who kind of came back and rewrote the show, but it's with HBO, so it's not edited, and the medical stuff is happening, and you're seeing things, and it's almost in a 24 style. So every episode is an hour and an actual shift. So it's just a full ER shift, and it's really interesting. It's really interesting. Oh, it might be. It is in Pittsburgh. She said she thought it was in Pittsburgh. It is in Pittsburgh, but wherever they're shooting, they share something with like they share studio space or something, because they'll go to different parts of Pennsylvania to get their real shots, and then they go to a sound stage for some of the other stuff. But and living in Chicago is interesting because my cousin, he passed away. He's the one that helped me build the theater and all the stuff in my house. He passed during COVID, but he was a firefighter. So Chicago Fire and all the Chicago stuff, and you can, they shoot all that stuff on location here. So that's pretty cool. I like stuff like that. I don't really like watching things. Sometimes I watch stuff that's in the same field as me, but I don't. It could be a little too real. I want stuff that I'm not attached to. Yeah, I want to watch about spies and working for the State Department. And every time I watch that shit, I'm like, why didn't I just work for the State Department? Like, why did I get off that political path that I was trying to get to? But
that's a good ass question, Doc.
We can break it down. I mean, I loved politics. I loved the theories of it, man. I loved diving into it and having those talks and those debates. I'm gonna just be honest with you. I treat politics like kind of like 50 Cent. What I mean by that is I was an early 50 Cent fan when he was underground and nobody liked him, and then everybody started liking him, and then it gets a little weird. That's how I felt with politics, where it's I still love Fifth. I still like politics, but now everybody's so involved. But when I'm in school in the early 2000s, right? Like when I'm doing college, nobody really cared about you was kind of in it for the love of the game, and now everybody, so it's not as special to me. And I just kind of left it. I was in leadership, and part of the reason I left is, I was a part of the Black Caucus. I was the vice chair of Black Dems in California, Young Black Dems, for 3.5 years. But every time I brought up a Black issue, man, especially around education, Black people, it was never the time. It was, and I never rocked with that. So that was a little bit of mine. But what did you originally want to be, Omar? Let the audience learn a little bit more about you. What did you originally want to do?
The audience would crack up, especially my best friend Richard, because I think that he was there when I was like, man, I want to be a cartoonist and I want to work for Walt Disney. That's what I originally thought when I was like a kid, thought I was going to do. And then it turned out, brother, that I don't have any artistic talent. About zero. My boy Julio is like, yeah, the man tried to draw a dragon once and it came out looking like a fucked up donkey. And then I thought, well, I don't have to be a artist to work for Disney. Right. I can go become an Imagineer. And then I got into engineering in 8th grade to look into it. And I was like, I don't like any of this either. I don't want to do with these. I don't like the numbers. I don't like anything. I loved politics since I was young, 8 years old. I had this moment in the car with my mom. I think we were listening to news or NPR or something. And it was, 87, 88, man, Reagan's in office. I'm about 7, 8 years old. And he's talking about trickle-down economics. And I'm like, I looked at my mom, just very, very matter of fact. She tells this story. She's just like, Jesus, dude, this it's like the Sixth Sense kid, like the I See Dead People kid. I look over and I'm like, this doesn't make any sense. This isn't going to work. And she's like the radio, like where we're going right now, like the commercial. I was like, no, what they're saying about this trickle down economics. And she's like, explain. And I'm like, well, what it sounds like, and I could be wrong, is that he's going to get all this money to the rich people, and the rich people are just going to give it to like their corporations or their low income people, or they make more jobs. I'm like, that's not how this works. People are fucking greedy. They're going to want to keep all that money because keeping all that money looks good. So isn't this in fact just a bunch of hoarding? And my mom was like, it's kind of like shell shocked. She's like, Jesus, kid, we may need to put you in the special school, kid. And they tried to put me in the special school, Doc. And the special school, Roberts Elementary at the time, was fucked up, man. And I was like, hell no, I don't want to go to this place, man. So I was just always like the weird kid in class. And then I get into political conversations with teachers at an extraordinarily young age and have a ridiculous understanding of it, to the point where my teachers are like, don't you need to go to the special class? And I'm like, man, I'm happy right here, man. I don't know what this, why you keep trying to put me in special shit left and right. Special is a quote. I think they just wanted to put me in a closet. I would have found R. Kelly and Tom Cruise in there. But I found this love for politics. So I thought, I'm going to absolutely go into politics and history, especially when I got into college. And I was doing an internship on the Hill. So I was in DC working on the Hill as an intern, doing the things. And I would remember being like, we were studying for finals, and I was at the Georgetown Library and being like, all right, I got to make a choice. Is it law? Is it politics? Or is it teaching? I've got a fondness for all three. And naively, Doc, I thought, I'm going to go into teaching for like a year or two. Then I'm going to go into law school. Then I'm going to go into politics. And fast forward, 25 years later? And I got to tell you, I don't regret it at all, because I've had a conversation with a lot of my grad school friends, and it's germane to the conversation for people on the call or on the line. I was lucky enough and fortunate enough to go to the Harvard Kennedy School. It was a very incredible place. It's a master's degree, and
it is the politics school
of the world, truly. Of the world, like over 50% of the class is fucking international.
Like you have to do something like that with it, you know what I mean? But yes,
it's badass. And I'm talking to a lot of them, and right now, it just seems like we're our efforts all for naught in terms of this realm, because one guy comes in and just destroys 20 years, 30 years of progress. And I got to tell you, Doc, I'm with you. Like, it was a really good metaphor, the 51. Because I love the engagement and the discussion of it, not nearly as much as I used to. I think I look at it more from a historical perspective, and I think that's what today's conversation is going to be a lot about, is the history of this shit. But I'm kind of like, yeah, when I was young, and I don't want to say naive, but just like, I can go out there and I can make a difference in the world, and I can change the world, and very John F. Kennedy-esque. And my buddy Richard's like, hey man, who do you think the last real like American president was? The last great American president? And I mean, unequivocally, I was like, John F. Kennedy. We haven't had a president since then that hasn't been bought and sold completely by lobbyists, corporations, the new political strategy. And I'm just like, yeah,
some would argue
that
the mob had him. So some would argue that maybe it was the mob, but you know.
Well, I mean, brother, yes. Although, interestingly enough, and this is
the
a
mob
cool
in Chicago,
story.
you know.
Yeah. You and I both know this story, that Frank Sinatra essentially got him elected. And that was through a cat named Momo, who was the mob leader in Chicago, who got the mafia, who ran the labor unions, to vote for Kennedy. And supposedly, because this is all in the annals of history, allegedly, his dad, Jack's dad, was the one who brokered that whole deal, and brokered it with Sinatra. And Sinatra like did not like him and did not like his angle or anything else, and did not want to have the mob involved. But he was like, no, we'll owe you. So when supposedly, Doc, supposedly again, John and Bobby didn't know that the dad brokered that deal. Kind of hard for me to believe that, like, you just up and won West Virginia out of nowhere, just out of the good-hearted nature of the labor unions and the coal miners at the time. But there's a kick-ass article about how Sinatra was deeply embedded in the election of JFK involving the mafia and like the mob amongst several institutions that were not too pleased with what Kennedy's direction was going in, particularly the war against the mob, dismantling of every nuclear armament.
His brother instantly, Bobby instantly went after the mob. And then there was a whole fallout with Sinatra and the mob. And if you're a fan of movies like The Godfather, like I am,
Godfather 2, man, explains everything.
Johnny Fontane,
Frank Sinatra, baby.
People that don't know, and if you watch these movies, and I know you're like, what are y'all getting at? This is South Star Classroom. Just go with us for a little bit. There's some education here, but it's a nice little moment. So the mob, when the mafia got hold of Mario Puzo's book and found out it was going to be a movie, they were none too pleased. Conversations happened. A lot of conversations happened, but eventually they get them on board.
Doc, hold on. Let's take a quick step back because it's a good thing for our audience. Why was the mob not too pleased about Mario Puzo's book?
Because you don't talk about the mafia. You don't talk about the mob. And for the record, I don't
think rule of Fight Club, baby.
Mob is either not mentioned or is mentioned that term is either not mentioned or used very, very little. They had a lot of rules and a lot of things were happening, but then they started to protect the movie. And even if there's a movie on, I think the show on Paramount, I think there's a show that
badass. It was so good.
And it's so funny because everybody when we talk about the unions or we have criticisms and people try to defend it, and it's fine, but it's like, that's the source of the mob's power. The source of the mafia's power is and will always be unions and workers. So much so that something happened. I think one of the directors got fired off The Godfather, and the mafia did not appreciate it. So they had all of the union workers working on the film quit. They all just stopped. That's the mafia. That's how powerful the mafia is. So there are some real life stories kind of merging into this fantasy of this American tale, but that's how you get to Kennedy and Sinatra and all of this stuff. The people working with the movie, they fell out of favor with Frank Sinatra because he wanted what he was due, and they thought he was a little prima donna, so they made a character of him in The Godfather. And what you gonna do if you just a singer and it's the mafia? Like what you gonna do? So weird fanfare, but I'm taking people on my nerdiness, but you have some things on your mind. I want to let you get into that.
It's all germane. It's all very germane to the conversation. It is germane because the shit that I want to talk about is actually directly connected way back to the 1960s, the election of Kennedy, and really why I think Kennedy was the last great American president that wasn't completely overridden by, I would say, lobbyist concerns or anything like that. Like, really, Kennedy just needed to play ball with the mafia, and he might have been okay, but I sincerely doubt it, because what we're talking about today isn't so much conspiracy driven, ladies and gentlemen, as much as it is just history. So I had this really cool conversation this weekend. Doc, wanted to get your take on it. And a buddy of mine was like, why are we in Iran? Like, why there? And I think the usual kind of boilerplate answer that Americans would give, that I think are just like very boilerplate and maybe even mainstream media, would be like, well, like, we're there to like help liberate the people, and the people want liberation. And the same same bullshit that we were peddling during the Persian Gulf. And I have a very different answer. Not only because of the history of this, but it goes back to Kennedy, it goes back to Nixon. And, my answer is pretty basic. And I think yours is the same, Doc. So that's just question number one. What are your thoughts on Iran and why we're there in the first place?
Yeah. Well, honestly, like I was telling you, beforehand, I haven't really dove fully into it yet, man. And I know that's definitely reeks of the privilege that people have, but I got a company to run. There's always something that can take all of your energy. And at some point, that's the one drawback of having so much information at your fingertips. So I haven't really been following it, but I mean, there's a few things that I do know that's just on the top layer, right? Like, one, I think the United States still wants to remind people that they're the United States. Like, we can come and do the things that we want to do. You're not going to stop us. We have some power. I think the big thing is oil, and who controls oil, and sending a message to OPEC and sending a message because, oil, they're trying to move away from the United States in a lot of different ways. Oil at the time, I don't know if it still is, you can correct me, but it's traded in dollars, which it was traded.
Your shit, baby.
Yeah, man. And the significance for everybody listening, right, is that's one of the ways you keep your money valuable, is that if it can only be purchased in this. And I'll even pour in some slavery American talk into that, right? So one of the ways that they kept black people down even after slavery was that before we had a currency, a United States currency, different plantations had its own money. There was like different things. So, even so, you're free now, Omar, and you can keep working here. You're not a slave. You can keep working here. But instead of US dollar, right, instead of that, you're getting these wooden nickels, or you're getting this other currency, and you can only use it at the general store here or the stuff here. And it's a way to kind of lock you in. So currency and what you can trade in, the dollar is already behind the euro, has been behind the euro for a while, but there's still some stability in the dollar because of oil. And many in OPEC want to move away from there. And we fight to not have that happen because it could be calamitous for us in some ways. So, that's just, I might have gotten some of those details a little, wrong or whatever, but for the most part, people out there, let us know if you knew that.
Yeah. But also, chime in, man, in the comments and be part of this conversation. Because, we're going to get political today. I'd love to hear from what you all have to say and your opinions and your thoughts, man. So let's take a quick step back. OPEC. So this is good. The the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, OPEC. And you're like, what the shit is OPEC? OPEC, right, ladies and gentlemen, formed in 1960, which is the time of Kennedy, right? Which, by the way, this was stone cold Richard Nixon. Stone cold Richard Nixon shit to create this monopoly and this idea of we're going to essentially value oil and decipher who's getting it and what currency we're going to trade it in. So what Doc said is very, very important. Across the world, ladies and gentlemen, no matter what country you're in, I was explaining this to a buddy this weekend, oil is traded in dollars. That is the equivocation. That is the balance, the foundation. It's saying, all right, if you're working in Swiss francs or euros, doesn't matter. We're valuing every barrel of oil on the dollar. The dollar has been the most stabilized currency for quite some time, particularly since World War II. So if you're the United States and you have the most stable, quote, currency in the world, and you do not want to have it devalued, well, oil is central to that, to make sure that people are still using the dollar, trading in the dollar still being kind of at the nexus of what is the central bank. The central bank, ladies and gentlemen, is a westernized bank started by the Rothschilds. Yes, those Rothschilds. That essentially sets trading prices, interest rates, Like, if you want to know, like the Federal Reserve, which is not a government organization, that is a private organization that determines the interest rates, loans, and trades for the United States, that shit is usually predicated by decisions from the Western bank, from the central bank. And if the dollar is at the forefront of that trading, it's a lot of power. So when folks are like, hey man, like, why are we in Iran? Like, follow the money. And what Doc and I always said is follow the money, right? So first we take Venezuela, one of the largest oil reserves in the world, proximity to the United States, an absolute just bath of oil and money that the United States can actually manipulate, because Venezuela, by the way, was not playing ball with the United States, was wanting to trade outside of the dollar in terms of their oil and remove themselves from OPEC. And the US had something to say about that. Then Iran. And people are like, no, we're there to liberate. And I'm like, look, man, cool, but did we liberate Darfur? Have we done anything about the civil war that's still going on in, like, I don't know, like Sudan, South Sudan, the Democratic Republic of the Congo? I mean, like, we ain't doing shit in Africa, where there's massive issues of genocide and deep need for liberation. So all this liberation talk, ladies and gentlemen, I think is a nice coding. And it's not to dismiss the fact that, dude, I'm sure you know this, Doc, like the Iranians that are both progressive and westernized are not down with Sharia law, not down with Ayatollahs, not down with having the restraints that they've had. And progressive and westernized Iranians would love to see this regime toppled. And that goes back to the Shah of Iran. And that goes back to Nixon, and that goes back to Ayatollah Khomeini and shit like that. So you know the history behind all that, right?
No, indulge us in our crowd. Indulge me in our crowd. Educate us. And Toya said China is in Africa. They absolutely are. China is in everywhere. Just for the record, I want to just give me 30 seconds. For instance, China owns every Jamaica port. They own the seaport, the airport. When I was trying to buy a house in Oakland, when I was looking, like, I was getting outbid by, like, they were buying houses like overpriced value in cash. Like, China is trying to own the entire world, but they are definitely, absolutely in Africa. There's a lot of European countries in Africa, and a lot of other major factors in Africa. But yes, I'm responding to the comments as they come in. I want them to stay with us.
Continue. No, it's a great comment, man. And I actually think it's a bit germane, because if we talk about China trying to basically monopolize transportation routes and export routes, right? Isn't that what we're dealing with right now with the Bay of Hormuz, the Isle of Hormuz? It's not the Isle. The Isthmus of Hormuz.
I don't know.
Oh, it's not. Is it the Isle of Hormuz? It's basically that passage of water that the Iranians use in order to export oil through boats. That essentially they're saying, hey, listen, we control this, and we can let whoever the fuck we want get access, and we're going to let the Chinese keep getting their oil. And the United States is acquiescing to that, because if we don't let China get their oil from Iran, that's going to create a massive, that's like World War III right there. Like,
and also China holds, we owe China a ton of money. China holds about $750 billion in US bonds. So, you know, and bonds, countries take out bonds. So one of the ways that countries raise money or keep money or things like that is you can buy bonds, and it's like you will just always have money if you own bonds. Bonds transcends a lot of different things, but China owns the vast majority of them. I think China and Japan holds most of our debt. So Yes. If you want to look into China and China's play after this is why, like, again, this is the South Star Classroom. If you had history teachers that actually love talking about history, like history has incredible stories, whether you're talking about history, you're talking about politics, you're talking about government classes and policy and politics, world governments, things like that. It's just really fascinating stuff. And we don't get to go and be nerds about this shit when our full team is here. So we're going to be all over today, baby, but y'all are going to get these random facts. So you've learned about, Toya asked about Blackwater. So Blackwater is a set of contractors, but Blackwater is not necessarily tied to the early origins of this story. Blackwater didn't come into existence until the 90s when the free market started to be able to take over. And like, so, you know, you could, instead of being on the U.S. contract or with the military over there, once we went over there, started to build infrastructure, you know, you can hire from the free market. Blackwater is a huge consultancy corporation. I don't know if that's how you should say it, but yes, that's, you know, I don't want her to get confused with what we're talking about in these 60s and this OPEC stuff where it's starting to now today. Again, there's some connection there, but it's important to discern those.
Indeed, man. There's a lot of connections. So let me connect a quick dot, right? So you're like, all right, Omar, this is about oil. This is about money. This is about, you know, the cultivation of a monopoly. And that is really what Richard Nixon was trying to do. He was trying to monopolize basically oil and even Eastern trade. He wanted to completely dominate China, Japan, Indonesia, Thailand. He wanted to basically say the West is going to dominate the East and make the East subservient to the West in terms of money and market trade. Well, that backfired in his face. The man, Richard Nixon, thought he was going to be elected. He was ready, man. He had his cabinet. He had everything ready to go. And then this like young upstart from Massachusetts shows up and the mob's involved and he loses an election he never thought in his life he was ever going to lose. And Nixon was tied to some very, very dirty shit. Part of it was this domination of the Western market over the East. The glory, I don't want to call it the glory. The aftermath of that is very much OPEC, which is essentially a monopoly on oil and its money. Here's what's going on. Recently, if y'all heard of the acronym BRIC, B-R-I-C-C, this is a collection of countries, and BRIC stands just simply for the 5 originator countries, Brazil, Russia, India, and China. And what they're saying is, all right, the West has this dominance with OPEC and trading everything on the dollar. What if we just form an alliance amongst ourselves and destabilize that market by coming together, joining together, and then trading in Bitcoin so that the dollar no longer becomes the prevalent currency around the world? We eliminate the dollar from the sale of oil and really relevant products and move that into Bitcoin. That, ladies and gentlemen, is what this shit is all about. Because guess who joined BRIC in 2026?
Was it Iran?
Might have been Iran. Might have been Iran. Yeah. Who is considering joining BRIC? Venezuela was looking at it. Didn't formally join, but was looking at it. So what this is all about, ladies and gentlemen, is going way back to Richard Nixon, is this predominance of the US dollar. And that's, look, some would say, and I think this is an interesting conversation because this is the next question, Doc. Is this necessarily a bad thing? If we're the US, is this necessarily a good thing or a bad thing that we're trying to essentially predominate all of these markets and make sure that the dollar is still the strongest currency in the world so that our economy is still thriving?
Well, as somebody who's traveled around the world, you definitely want to have one of the more dominant currencies, right? Like you travel and everywhere takes euros and dollar. And you know, and with our markets kind of fluctuating up and down, and you know, like I travel different countries, right? So you do as well. One of the first things both of us would probably do is when we see where we're going, hey, what is the conversion rate? what is the dollar worth over here? How often does it change? Like, is this a good place to go? Right. So for instance, I go to the Bahamas a lot. Bahamas has their currency directly on US currency. So one Bahamian dollar is $1. I think they might be the only ones in the Caribbean that does that. So is it good for us to have one of the stronger currencies? Yes, it is quite simply yes. The means by which you go and maintain that level of power and what that means and who wants it and what everybody is willing to do, us to keep it and others to take it away or to kind of define something new. Because think about it, if you're an OPEC, if you are not just OPEC, right? But like if you are one of these oil merchant countries, you are really, really, really rich. And if we can affect that in ways that they don't always like. So people want to be from up underneath the dollar's thumb as far as the most valuable asset in the world at the moment, which is oil is concerned. So, I won't talk outside of my neck, but from my limited knowledge, that would be my response.
Yeah. The dollar is been and is considered to be the most stable currency in the world, really because of OPEC.
It's because
because of oil. And don't forget, we are a major producer of oil ourselves. We like to think that we're getting all of oil from everywhere else. No, man, we're a major producer of oil. This isn't just about the use of oil. This is really about the manipulation of that market. And you're seeing that oil is speculative, just like the stock market is. And that's why the price of oil has risen. This is why gas prices are going through the roof right now. And is it necessarily a good thing or a bad thing? As someone who lives in the United States, as someone who's here, who's like the quote beneficiary of this policy, okay, I can see why the United States, in a draconian way, wants to capitalize and own these markets. Again, I think, Doc, you bring up a really good issue. The problem is it starts stemming into some really serious shit. Yeah. And that is getting into this conflict. I'm really glad that we're getting here with Israel, because that's kind of the next question. It's like, how is this connected to Israel? Why is Israel at play? Why are we giving so much money to Israel? Why are they so deeply involved? Because maybe your audience is like, okay, Omar, cool. Like, we have this thing with Iran and we're getting a bunch of bullshit on the news about the liberation of people. Most people would probably surmise this is about oil, but they're also probably wondering, like, how does Israel have much to do with this? So, third question. Where do you think Israel's involvement in this?
Oh, I'm definitely going to let you lead on this one, buddy.
I will.
Definitely going to let you lead on that part of the topic, buddy. Nah, man. I mean, but listen, the relationship between Israel and the United States has been a strong one for a long, long, long time. And they protect that relationship. There's a lot of money. A lot of this stuff comes back to money and power. But the deeper you go, a lot of this stuff, it gets even deeper than that for many, many of these people. And so, these are just, people have to understand, right? The United States is a really young country. And people, groups, religious groups, racial groups, they have memories and they remember stuff. And a lot of things have happened. There are things that happened in the 50s that are shaping things now. Things in the 60s.
Exactly.
Decisions that were made. Things that FDR had to do to keep the country running during those times, like, that are still kind of coming due, right? Like, so this is my buff in for like world history, and world history being something that if it was taught better to everybody in elementary school, I think we'd have a better stomach for it today and understanding the way that many of the other developed countries that I travel to absolutely do. They're absolutely, we're very, for as much money, power, and privilege we have as the United States, as a base, as a consumer base, we're pretty poorly educated on global economics and global history and what's actually happening, which makes it easier for us to kind of be lied to. So unless you're getting some news at night from a station with an accent, you're probably not really diving deeply into what these conflicts are or why other countries may hate us in the ways that they do.
Absolutely, man. And going back to, we've had a good relationship with Israel. Why? The point. Why is the U.S. so close to Israel? If you're asking, ladies and gentlemen, this goes way back. So very quick notes. World War II happened. The Holocaust happened. There needed to be a secure state for Jews where they could be protected, where they didn't have to worry about their country trying to kill them, much like Germany was trying to. Thus the creation of Israel in 1947, 1948, as that country. So this was after World War II. Well, because the United States and Western powers were so close with Israel, Israel kind of became base for Western powers to have some level of predominance in the Middle East. Do not forget, ladies and gentlemen, that Western countries, Europe, to an extent the United States, but mostly Europe, they're the ones who made up all the borders in Africa. They're the ones who made up all the borders in the Middle East, purposely to create that level of rank contention, putting tribe against tribe, people that normally wouldn't consort with one another against one another, because the Europeans are like, hey, let's just put every tribe in Africa in Nigeria and just have them all try to figure out how to work with one another. There's no mystery why Nigeria is so destabilized, or the apartheid in South Africa, why it lasted so damn long. Europe and the Western countries purposely destabilized those areas. And we did the same thing to the Middle East in order to capitalize on their resources, which was oil. Industrial revolution, oil was going to fund everything. If we can dominate Western oil, we will continue dominating the world. So our place where we could set up shop, set up base in the Middle East hasn't always been Israel. We have tried in other places, but as you can see, a lot of these peace accords between Egypt and Israel and Saudi Arabia really have a lot to do with oil and oil trade and the predominance of the American dollar. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the Israeli people, which I want to make sure that we're talking about three different things here. You've got Jewish folks. Okay, this is a religion and culture that is pervasive across the world. You have got the Israeli citizens of a country that is Israel, much like citizens of the United States. But like citizens of the United States, ladies and gentlemen, I, for one, am not a big fan of Donald Trump. I can live in this country, not be a fan of our leadership, not be tied to our leadership, and say, I want something different. The people of Israel, ladies and gentlemen, are not behind the prime minister of Israel. The prime minister of Israel, a guy named Benjamin Netanyahu, Bibi, our friend Bibi, Doc. Bibi, in order to stay in power over the last 16 years, has made some pretty interesting deals with the furthest of right political parties in Israel, who really do not want to qualify Palestine as a state, do not want to give them any kind of land liberation, nothing. There are far-right people in Israel that are like, we should own and dominate Palestine because they're going to kill us, so let's just kill them and get rid of them. Like, just advocates for straight-up genocide. Not a good thing. Mm-hmm. Bibi is beholden to those groups. In this whole realm between Iran, who wants to liberate themselves from Sharia law, but has not done so yet because now Ayatollah Khomeini, the Ayatollah who was killed by us, his son is now in power and wants to instill further Sharia law, is still like, hey, we don't recognize Israel, and Israel is kind of acting up right now, and we're not agreeing with this whole Palestine thing. We don't like this whole Palestine thing. And we kind of support the Palestinians. So Israel made an ultimatum to the United States. It's like, look, we're going to bomb them. Like, you're either with us or you're not. And the United States had to make a very difficult decision to be like, shit, if we don't go in here and try to control this and mitigate this, this is going to be World War III. This is just straight up World War III. The fact that like Israel is going to war with Iran, shit, man. Talk about like the prophecies, talk about Nostradamus, talk about all this shit. Again, so much of this has to do with oil. Mm-hmm. Palestinians sit on a massive oil reserve, ladies and gentlemen. Massive. And if the Palestinians finally got their land, their autonomy, the Palestinian state, particularly in the West Bank, they could, in fact, benefit immensely from this money and from this oil, and could, in fact, rise up and be the state that I think they want to be. I am not for and do not advocate for the killing of anybody. So I don't want to see Palestinians start killing Israelis. I don't want to see Israelis killing Palestinians. I'd very much like a two-state solution. But when you're all like, holy shit, what is this all about? This really has a lot to do with the predominance of an oil market, the predominance of currency, the predominance of money. And those things mean who's in charge. The funny thing is, Doc, and I think you know a lot about this, while we're sitting here fighting over this, guess who's sneaking behind the world's back, if you will? I don't even want to say sneaking behind the world's back. I think they're doing it quite literally to everyone's face and buying up basically the Silk Road, buying up all those transportation rights, buying up all these properties.
Does it start with a C?
It may start with a C.
It may start with a C.
Are we playing checkers when the Chinese are playing chess?
Listen, man, the Chinese have listen. After when the USSR when USSR lost and China lost and everybody went back to their corners after the Cold War and said, check this out. We will never be in this position again. And if it comes back, we're going to be ready. And the Chinese made a very resolute decision that we're going to be the world's bank. We're going to be like, they don't control us. We're going to work people for nearly nothing. We're going to work children. We're going to do whatever we need to do. We're going to buy up everything so they can talk about our child laws and work things, but they're going to buy everything from us because we're going to be, highly profitable, and we're going to buy everything. We're going to own major parts of the United States. And if we ever have an issue, the bill comes due. We're going to own, like, why does China want to own the Caribbean? Why does China, like, I go to the Bahamas, like every year. I have a timeshare there. I've owned that property. I've owned that timeshare for a while. They just built the Baja Mar. It's the largest casino, beautiful hotel and casino in the Caribbean called the Baja Mar. I think.
This is where, brother?
It's in the Bahamas.
Bahamas.
Yeah. So where I come in at, my little place my little area that I own, I can walk to the Baja Mar, right? The point is, wherever I've gone, in every major country, every major place I've gone, whether it's Colombia, whether it's here, whether it's Jamaica, the Chinese own not just a little bit of shit. They own a lot and very significant as well. So I'm guessing for that answer, boss, is China. That's what I'm guessing.
And I got to tell you, do you think that we're playing checkers when the world is playing chess? Or I think, like Bill said, is this a very kind of billionaire class thing where they're all in cahoots with one another and they don't really give a shit who's in charge because they're all going to profit one way or the other as to who's the leader of the free world and who's not?
Now, I will say, I don't think that we are, I think we might be playing checkers. I might be playing, because I don't know. I do think you don't become the United States and stay the United States and be the United States for this long. There are some people in some very high places that we will never know, in those shadows, that doing things that we will never hear about. I think that there's very smart people on all sides of this stuff. And I think that people are also dug in. I think that there are backdoor conversations that are happening because that's how you get things done. I think there's a lot. And I think that one thing countries do understand is that your electorate, there's certain things that they wouldn't be able to handle if they knew. The price of freedom, the price of all this stuff, the price to be an American or an Englishman or, any of these, or China, whatever, right? Like, there's some things happening, and I don't think that most of us have the stomach for. I think if you are a decent person, you wouldn't have the stomach for. But if you look at world history, it's all been a game of risk. It's all a game of who can control what. And what I do like to study is I like to study the fall of huge dynasties throughout history, because they all fall. And when you look at them and you look at the things that kind of were happening around that time of the fall, and then you look at the United States, nobody rules forever. It's not a thing. And so that's my incomprehensible answer to the question that you just asked me.
No, I think it was, look, dude, if I had every single one of the answers, A, and I was publicly broadcasting it, I might get killed. But B, I'm not a billionaire. I don't understand the length and depth of these things because it's not something I've ever been a part of or exposed to. But I think as a historian, I'm starting to see some interesting trends. And one trend, Doc, that I don't want you just to pass off, that I want to get deeper in, is because there's been a lot of books about it. There's been a lot of discussion about it. And I'm kind of curious, like, are we seeing the fall of the United States in terms of our dynasty? And where do you think that's going to go? Because the British Empire fell dramatically after, everyone liberated, but they seem to be doing pretty well. So where do we think this is the fall of the United States? And if so, where do you think that's going to lead in the next several years?
I would hope not. I think things are gonna, where we may have been like this for a long time, I think it's gonna come like here, but I think that we're still gonna maintain something. I think that, and again, I don't think Donald Trump or any US president per se is in control of that stuff. Like I can call Donald Trump a jackass, but I do think that there are people above him, regardless of who the president is, regardless of certain things, where decisions are being made and things are being, kind of looked out for. But I do think that, we definitely taking some dents in the armor. I can't say the other one because I found out that's a slur, but we're taking some dents in the armor. You can't say the CH one no more. I learned that.
Okay. I follow you.
I'm trying to be a better person. Yeah.
Okay. But shit.
Yeah, but this is the thing though, right? You and I are like really in the minority of people that want to read about this stuff and talk about it and engage in it, because it's really difficult to kind of keep up with it. It's hard to look at. And I think that where Americans are starting to engage more, and I think one of the mistakes that were made is letting the corporate power run so unchecked, and then their kind of their level of arrogance where they're not hiding the ball anymore. Like, this isn't the days of the Koch brothers anymore, right? Where the Koch brothers are doing their thing, and most of us can't pick the Koch brothers out of a lineup. We all know their names, but if the average person saw a Koch brother walking down the street, they wouldn't, and that's by design. Like that's intentional. Whereas Mark Zuckerberg or Elon Musk or some of these other people, like they want that fanfare in a different kind of way, and and I think some of this stuff is rattling them a little bit. I do think that Facebook and Zuckerberg were rattled when basically they took over elections. Like when basically they were used for Brexit and they were used for the first Trump election. I think that it got crystallized for Zuckerberg, like, oh, I have a lot of power. Like I have like world destabilizing power. And I think that Americans, because of our disdain for big corporations here, I think people are now starting to leak out and see more of this global stage at play. That's so I think that's how I think people are more curious, but then I think people are still kind of misinformed, which is dangerous. So again, I don't have strong answers for these, Omar, but I would say as an American, I'm also not going to root against my own well-being. Like I think the difference, if America falls differently from Britain, is that we made enemies differently than Britain did. Like this is not the days of muskets. We're not in that. Like we dropped 2 bombs on like we've done that. Like we've go watch Oppenheimer if you haven't, right? Like there are some major decisions that we have made that people don't forget about. And we don't forget about. So, that's my observational answer, I would say, just in what I'm observing. So yeah, and Trump is a useful idiot for Putin. I mean, look, and Bill, I know that you have this thing with Trump, and I don't like Trump either. I don't. But Trump is not responsible for the shit that we talking about in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, man. And this is what you get what I'm saying? Like it's like there is any United States president that gets put in this chair, if this is the president's chair, you can go in with whatever thoughts and things you had, but once you in and they close that door and like, okay, here's what you need to know. Here's what's already happening. I think that I think they all hear things that's like, oh shit, okay, that's why we have to be friends with those people, or that's what's happening, or that's what they're sitting on. I think it's interesting, and a lot of those things I don't want to know. Oh, I don't. Ignorance is truly bliss in some of these ways.
Yeah, I mean, I think the multitude of information that a president hears is insane. And if I was in that room, I'd be like, "Holy shit!" I'm not defending Trump in any way, shape, or form. And I'm definitely not supporting that guy. I mean, shit, man. Like, I'm having to deal with his ass and all the ICE stuff and his like stupidity and just the stupidity of the people that are there. And I mean, I think that's part of the issue, right? Like when you put up a bunch of like illiterate, dumbass motherfuckers, you're going to get controlled. And that's what I really think is going on here. Like, to be honest with you, Bill, someone's pulling those strings big time. And Trump's just the willing idiot that's going along with it. But the reason I brought up all the history, Bill, and I think you'd love this and appreciate this, and this, and kind of circle this back in, is that this script, this manual that I'm seeing playing out right now with Iran, with Venezuela, with the American dollar, this was all Nixonian ideology. Mm-hmm. This was born and bred from the Nixon era. This has got, is it Roger Stone?
Yes.
Yeah. It's got Roger Stone written all over it. This was their plan. This was the ideology. And what I'm seeing is that like Trump has been the most willing participant to deal with to allow all this stuff to happen. That this is why I brought up Kennedy, why I brought up Nixon, because this is, guys, what, 1972 was when Nixon was elected, because LBJ was, he finished the term 68. Thanks, 68. This has all been happening since 1968. And we're seeing it all come to fruition. So if you're interested, ladies and gentlemen, go look up, do a little bit of reading about what Nixon was trying to do during his presidency that he didn't get a chance to finish because Watergate, and he got thrown out, and Gerald Ford, eaten by wolves, according to Saturday Night Live. I don't know if you remember that skit, man. It's a good one. Gerald Ford eaten by wolves. Gerald Ford's not going to get eaten by wolves. You're the one who wants to go to to the Bahamas.
Yeah. Listen, man, I know we're coming up on time, man.
We are on time. We are on time, brother. I
know we're about to be at time. I would just say this because I don't like that Trump guy either. I also don't want people's hatred for Trump to make them dumb. Like, I'm not talking about Bill. I love Bill. I'm just saying in general, right? Like, still go look at your history, because there's some. You go look at all the really bad presidents, and I would put Trump in the top 5. But James Buchanan, like, let me just. James Buchanan is the worst. James Buchanan, the South seceded on James Buchanan's watch. Okay, like the country. They didn't talk about splintering. It splintered. Like, we had multiple currencies. We had multiple things happening in this country at the same time. Like, the
man loved a dinner party, Doc.
Confederacy got built, huh? It was crazy.
Yeah, man, the man loved a good ass dinner party. That's what he was doing while the South was seceding for the United States. Yeah. He was having some good ass dinner parties.
Exactly. it was crazy. It was definitely crazy. But but now, what we should do as I let you close, man. Maybe what you and I do is maybe once a month we just do.
I want it.
Hour.
I want it.
We just do a little bit of his own branding. We ain't got to do it weekly. We'll just kind of do it. Would y'all like that? Would people follow along with that? Let us know. Like, I'm curious as to what people will say about that. But I'll let you. This was fun, man. I know we didn't have a big direction, but again, it just feels good to be able to talk freely about these things with somebody else that is reading this stuff. And I think our public needs to be aware of this stuff. I think it's just as important as everything that we talk about on South Star Classroom. And I don't want us to be dumb Americans.
Indeed. And I will say this. I was a history teacher. Like, I love history. I love talking about it. Doc and I could talk all day long about this shit. So comment in if you're like interested in a monthly show where we just start doing a wrap up on political stuff. And it's just us, just like Doc and I shooting the shit, kind of getting each other's opinions. Y'all are part of the conversation. Then I would love that, because I do that naturally with Doc anyways. Something I love doing with him, period. The reason I'm so adamant about it, the reason I'm like, why are we bringing this up on the South Star Classroom? It's not just to be like, hey, we should learn civics, not just we should learn government, not just that we should learn history, because I'm a huge fan of ensuring that our kids are intelligent and smart and reading. So much of this has to do with critical thought and being an informed citizen. Yeah. And it was an interesting conversation because I had a bit of a similar one with a good friend of mine, and he's a very bright man. I love him to death. He just didn't know any of this stuff, didn't understand OPEC, didn't understand this. And it's like, dude, as an American citizen, you can either sit in the back seat and let this ride happen for you, or, we can start getting in the front seat and determining our own self-determination, because we've got an idea about where this is headed, why it's happening, and be able to inform our citizenry to make better decisions. Remember, like, this is supposed to be a country of the people, by the people, and for the people. And it ain't felt like it's been that way in a long time. And I kind of wanted to go to that. So on that note, Doc, good talking with you, man. Love you, brother. We'll be back with the rest of the crew next week, ladies and gentlemen. Same bat time, same bat channel, Tuesdays. Was it 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern? Have a great week. Stay safe.
Peace out, y'all. Have a good one, man.